Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Mary Marino Kozub, and I am the Education Program Manager here at the Burchfield Penney Art Center. I'm welcoming you to Hyatt's All Things Creative Sketch Break. Today, my prompt is spring. Spring is such a wonderful time of year. It has that magic of the trees blossoming, and one of my favorite trees is the cottonwood tree. So I'm going to show you how I draw a cottonwood tree. You could draw one too if you can make the letter V. And here's a great big tall V that's kind of upside down. And then I'm going to add a couple of other V's down here. I think you see where I'm going with this now. And an open V here, and maybe a second one up here. The reason I love the cottonwood tree is because they provide such wonderful space for animals and birds to thrive. So, see here what I did? I have a little tall skinny V, 3 little tiny V's at the bottom, and then 2 big V's that I have allowed to become the branches of my tree. I'm also going to have, I hope you could see these little dotted lines, because I've created a less than sign and a more than sign, which will act as the parameters for the full head of leaves I'm going to add to my tree. So this part is a little bit tedious, but kind of fun too. I'm going to allow my pencil to dance around my more than and less than sign. Of course, a full-blown tree has so many millions of leaves, we could not possibly draw every single leaf. So I'm going to just make some suggestions for my leaves. And now that I have the outer side identified, maybe I'll add a few more down here, I'm going to build in some little billowing boughs and clumps of tree formations. Some of them will extend over my tree trunk. Some of them will go behind it. And some of them will just kiss the edges of the branches. Once I have this, I want to go back in and take my little V shape and make it a little more irregular, because we know trees do not have perfectly straight lines, but rather jaggedy, rough edges where the bark grows. At this point, I'm going to identify a light source. Could be a sun, it could be a moon. I have it up here in the upper right-hand side, and as the light comes out, this side of the tree will be lighter than this side of the tree. And this time I'm going to add a little piece of paper here just to kind of keep things clean and to prevent too much smudging going on. I can begin creating some sort of bark. I think I'm going to switch to my mechanical pencil for this. Maybe a little fatter one. I could put a knot in the tree if I want to. And I'm going to remember that everything that happens on this side is going to be a little bit darker than what goes on this side. And the way you make things dark or light with a pencil has to do with the amount of pressure you use, but also the amount of white paper you're allowed to peek through. So go here. There was a song I loved to sing when I was a young girl called Tammy, and she heard the cottonwoods whispering about, and I always held on to that. And still to this day, when I see the cottonwood trees, I love to hum along that little song. Some of you who are my age might recall that song. A lot of people don't like the cottonwood trees, claiming they're very, very messy, and they do throw lots of material twice a year. But to me, that just adds to their mystery and their beauty. So I'm filling in my clumps of trees with a diagonal mark, which is just sort of my natural mark. I'm going to switch now to a lighter pencil. I think that comes from my being so enamored with the marks that Degas made, but also our own Charles Burchfield. You might notice that on the underside of the boughs, I have a little more lines, creating a darker value. And the upper side of the boughs, I keep a little bit lighter because the light is hitting the tops of the trees. You always have to have contrast against the ground, contrast one to the other, so that you could actually see the formation of the shapes. Without that contrast, it all becomes one great big blob. Come back in here, create a little more texture in my tree. Let the branches have a little texture. I keep a slight edge here on the side, even though it's on the light side, because the tree is round and moving in. And if ever I find that I need to get rid of a little bit of the bark, I love this handy dandy electric eraser. Which allows me to clean up very quickly. I think I mentioned that the squirrels love to sit up in the cottonwood trees, and oftentimes you can find a dray or a squirrel's nest high above the, almost kissing the sky, high above the branches of the cottonwood. I have to move down here, get a little texture into my trunk area. And I'm going to find a ground here now. So unless a tree is sitting high on the top of a mountaintop, it does sit down into the earth. For continuity in my drawing, I like to cross over from one shape into the other. But you'll find your own marks and your own way the more you sketch and the more you play with your pencil. Oop, I think I need a little more bunches of leaves down here. Find them a little bit darker. Charles Burchfield often drew cottonwood trees. And you can find cottonwood trees across the United States. Even in New Mexico, there are many cottonwood trees. They're down at the edges of the Rio Grande because they suck up the water. And so if you have a little wet area, like I do in my backyard, the cottonwoods flourish. Notice how I'm moving my paper up. It does have the disadvantage of not seeing what's below, but the advantage is you won't smudge the pencil and lose any kind of definition that you may want. Plus it keeps your arm from getting all full of. I'll take a little back step and see. I think I want to bring this in deeper, so I'm going to use my eraser. Bring it in. I think I need to connect this a little bit more. So I'll bring a pencil around here. Let's see if I'm true to my own instructions of keeping this side darker and this side lighter. I've done a pretty good job of that. I'm going to add another little bow. decision time. A little clump of leaves right here crossing into my bark. Add a little more texture to the bark itself. And thin this out over here. I think I want to come back here and do a little more fun with the outside edge of the tree. Perhaps I'll add a little bit of cloud. When drawing, I try to remember to give life to my line by some of the little clouds here. By using a line that has a lot of quality to it, and by that I mean a line that gets light and dark as you move along. Breathes life into the line. Clouds. Clean them up a little bit. I'm going to go around and bring in an even smaller line around the edges of my tree. To suggest the tiny little leaves that are happening throughout. And this will take some time, probably more time than we have together today. Sometimes you have to take a minute or two and ask yourself, is it tree or is it leaf? And reestablish your drawing. And I'm going to make this a little more leaf. My dark side, so I'm going to fill in the light areas of my dark side with a little bit more value. See how I'm doing? Not too bad. And let's see how we've come along. Not too bad. I hope you'll have a chance to go outside and find a cottonwood tree in your neighborhood and appreciate the glory of the cottonwood on a beautiful spring day. Here's an example of one that I had a little more time to work on. Please notice how I rounded it with lines that go parallel to the earth's edge and some clouds that are a little bit more mature. And I want to thank you so much for joining us today, and be sure to come back on May 18th for our next sketch break. Thank you so much. Have a great spring day.